Good evening and welcome to the 76th On the Nail Literary Gathering, organised by the Limerick Writers' Centre, supporting arts and culture in Limerick since 2008. Anyone who wants to read at the open mic, please let Dominic know before it begins in approximately an hour's time. Also, I'd like to draw your attention to our book table. There are books by local and guest authors, so please browse through them, and if you like, show your support online. This month's guest reader is Conor McManus. Now, Conor, who has had pieces published in Cronog, Stinging Fly and the Moth. He has been shortlisted for the Fish Short Story competition and received artist retreat bursaries from Leitrim County Council. Ladies and gentlemen, for the 76th On the Nail Literary Gathering, Conor McManus.
As you know, my name is Conor McManus and I'm from Leitrim. I grew up in a small town, in one of the smallest counties in the country. And I've written a lot about that. A lot of my work is memoir, and there's some themes running through it. Some of it will be related to, I suppose, growing up in a town near the border. And just one thing before I start reading, there's a few things going on in this. There's a couple of characters. The captain is my dad, and then there's a character called Weights and Measures, and he crops up throughout the work with different comments. He's a bit of a wise guy. So the names just pop up, so forewarning on that. The first piece is called The Night of Conor Fla, and I've had this published in Cronog, but also there's Scammon Heard this week, so I'm very happy about that. He's like Jesus Christ on the cross, my mother said, when she found Donny Byrne unconscious from drink with his arms outstretched on the carpet of our good room floor. He slept on his back with his head under the sink. He wore a beard, his hair long, a brown t-shirt and nothing else. My mother said he might look like a hippie, but he had a good pensionable job on the motor tax in Dublin, and he was a great flute player. I went in for a look and was embarrassed with my mother standing there, and him with his bits out. But she was laughing and said, imagine that thing going into an office like that on a Monday morning. The good room's open fire had a high mantelpiece upon which sat two porcelain dogs, a baby grandfather clock from America, and a picture of my uncle, on my mother's side, who picked potatoes with Big Tom on Jersey Island before he went to sea, and before Big Tom was Big Tom. On one wall hung a picture of Pope John the 23rd. Beside it, a black and white photo of my mother, the captain, and the Bishop of Darwin, Australia, the captain's cousin, on their wedding day. On the opposite wall, over a sideboard with a set of silver, which the captain's grandfather got in his retirement from the board of the Cavan and Leitrim Railway, hung a signed picture of Charles Stuart Parnell, the uncrowned King of Ireland. The railway was long gone. The tracks cut up to make gate posts and hay sheds, and the engines into India. Weights and Measures said it would take a good man 6 hours to cut through a railway track with a hacksaw. My great-grandfather did jail with Parnell, and the captain had a paper clipping that called him a Drumshambo corner boy, after him and his brother Corny, who ended up shot in America, had a fight with the priests and the anti-Parnellites in Carrick, and broke up the rally, and ran Tim Healy, Parnell's enemy, out of town. That's what you call people that were against something. Anti-this or anti-that. I wondered were my great-grandfather and his brother, like the boot boys on Hill 16 with their denim jackets and red monkey boots with yellow lacers, fighting when Dublin lost. Once a year, the captain's cousins, two brothers, the pipe and the priest, would visit, and they'd keep the captain up half the night drinking whiskey and talking about Parnell. The pipe was a teacher who chewed the pipe and drank tea and knew how to make the poultice for the warble. The priest was from Alabama with no collar and the top button of his black shirt open. He drank whiskey and smoked all white cigarettes that looked long in his hand. He was the priest for them out there on death row and said they called the electric chair the Yellow Mama, and you could be on death row waiting to die for 10 years. One night I was listening to them talk, and the pipe said, Tim Healy was a pure bastard. His face was tight and the pipe moved up and down, and I had seen his teeth when he said it. That was the first time I heard anybody curse in front of a priest, and I thought you couldn't do that. I looked at the priest and he had a serious face and was nodding in agreement with the pipe. Not at all put out by the curse word. I looked at the captain and he was nodding and agreeing with a serious face, and I was trying to calculate how long Tim Healy was dead and did they know him. Nobody was saying anything, and I felt I should say something, but I knew it would be a danger to say anything like, poor Tim Healy, for instance, even as a joke. I knew I had to be careful in these situations. I had been in trouble the Monday before with Jack Garrity for opening my mouth. Jack Garrity worked in Mars Hardware, and he was all chat if I went in looking for a tap washer, say, or brass butt hinges maybe, or heavy-duty sticky-back tape to redo the joint in the lino on the bar floor. Pulling the bottled green tape quickly off the roll, he'd used the length of his arm to measure it. He said it was 1 yard, or 36 inches exactly, from his thumb to his oxter, a perfect specimen of a man. My mother said he wasn't a bad so-and-so, but an out-and-out pro. The embassy had been burned the previous Saturday in Dublin, and I was in the shop, and Jack was giving out about the guards beating up on the protesters. And he said the guards caused the riot, and Pat Deasy and Jim Noonan were in looking for a bag of cement and a pound of 1.5-inch ovals and not saying much. Just things like, sure you couldn't be up to them, and you'd have to be up early to catch a guard, And I just said, the protesters had metal pipes wrapped in barbed wire and covered with black flags. And Jack lit on me. Where the fuck did you hear that shite, he said. I'd never heard a person talk to me like that before, but his face was red. I said it was on the news. I had seen it on the television. And then he blew a gasket completely and said, more fucking lies from those sticky cunts above in Donnybrook. I didn't know what he meant by that, but I knew from then on that sometimes you had to be careful with what you said. And I knew this was one of those times. So I wasn't going to say anything, good, bad, nor indifferent, about Tim Healy, dead or alive. I just nodded and looked serious. And it was in our good room where Sean McDermott held a meeting and spoke when he came to rouse the people of Drumshanbo, and light the flame of freedom in Leitrim, but they weren't too happy with that and they pushed him off the High Street wall, and him with the bad leg. I think I was the only person in my class that knew Sean McDermott had a bad leg. I felt proud that Sean McDermott was in the history book and him from Leitrim and having been in my house. And I knew Weights and Measures was proud of him as well. Sure wasn't he from only down the road, one of our own, a neighbour's child. McDermott was a warrior, he said, and him with John Badleg. The only thing that put a halt to his gallop was the King's bullet. Weights and Measures dragged deep on his woodbine and blew out and down over his bottom lip, creating a fan of smoke. He reached for his rum and black off the counter and looked into it. Swirling it in the glass, he said gravely, before gulping and grimacing, he was the same age as our Lord when he died. We really only used the good room at Christmas when we moved the television in and lit the fire in it. The rest of the year, Jim Corbett, a boarder from Lanesborough who stole Tipp-Ex out of the bank and big elastic bands for me, ate his breakfast and dinner in it. I don't know if Jim Corbett spotted the silver snail trails across the carpet when he came down for breakfast. He must have, but he never said a hate. On Thursday nights, a dentist from Enniskillen used the good room to pull teeth locally. He had a diamond ring in his pinky and a gold tooth and oiled his hair, and always had a few half ones before his first customer. That's why the captain plumbed the sink in the corner of the good room in the first place. And during the festival, our good room was used to store the amplification, the mics and the speakers and stuff. And Foster and Allen used it to change into their leprechaun suits when they were playing on stage on the High Street. Apart from that, we didn't use it much. So how Donny Byrne ended up on the carpet of the good room floor with his bits out, I don't know. But it was only then I realised anything was liable to happen in our house on the night of a Connacht Fleadh.